Ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to announce that on Tuesday, November 22nd, I am going to debate the question of who killed John F. Kennedy with the New York Times best-selling author, Gerald Posner. Thank you very much. All right.
That's funny.
You just made everybody wake up with that.
We may have had technical problems. We need to do that again at the end. Let's move on. So, it's very hard to follow some of the great speakers that you have had. I have told anybody that Barr McClellan really is the person who inspired me to write my book, The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ. This is a book I took to 6 publishers, and all of them told me that it had no commercial appeal whatsoever. It couldn't possibly succeed. It, of course, became a New York Times bestseller. And on the 50th anniversary of John Kennedy's murder, the only assassination book that outsold it was Bill O'Reilly's book, Killing Kennedy, which you can find in the fiction section of your local Barnes & Noble. So take that, David Talbot. Anyway, I honestly believe that call them what you want, the New World Order, the military-industrial complex, the two-party duopoly, the establishment mainstream media combine, those who conducted a coup d'etat on November 22nd, 1963, finally lost control of our federal government 12 days ago. Now, I know that this is an inherently non-political gathering, and I would be the last one who would want to insert politics into a gathering like this.
Right.
But let us have, just for my own edification, a division of the House. Will those who voted for the Trump-Pence ticket please raise their hands? With those who voted for the Clinton, what was that joker's name again? Oh, who voted for Hillary Clinton, please raise their hands. Have these people beaten immediately. Just kidding. Hold on, we're getting there. We're getting there. For those who voted for my good friend, Governor Gary Johnson, with those, excellent, he's a good man. For those who voted for Dr. Jill Stein, a very brave and courageous woman, excellent. So, look, the important thing I don't need to tell you is that you participate. I have known the president-elect for 40 years, and I have worked on and off for him as a political consultant. I was the chairman of his 2000 Presidential Exploratory Committee. I was a consultant to his exploratory effort 4 years ago when I desperately wanted him to run against Mitt Romney. I am proud to say that I supported him and campaigned for him and gave many surrogate speeches for him in this most recent election. People have asked me if I was surprised, and I must tell you that I was not. Now, I am, at least I have been, a political consultant by trade, although I'd rather now write about politics and analyze it than do it. Sometimes you have no choice but to jump in the pool, however. I am not going to tell you that he is in any way perfect, and neither would he. But here's what I do know. He is not beholden to any special interest. He is not owned by our intelligence services. He is not owned by the multinational corporations. He is not owned by the big banks. He is his own man. He has a view of history and a view of the situation in the country that is of his own education, of his own reading, of his own making. He is enormously courageous. He understood that he was taking his life in his hands every time he went out to campaign. We pray for his safety and the safety of his family because, ladies and gentlemen, his election is incredibly threatening to a group of very powerful people in institutions who have had their way in this country since 1963. The question of the documents, the 3,063 remaining documents that pertain to the Kennedy assassination that are scheduled to be released by 2017, unless the government finds some overriding reason why they should not be released. I am hopeful that President Trump will see the efficacy of full disclosure and transparency. Now, no one speaks for the president-elect, but I thought that the fact that he raised the question of Rafael Angel Cruz, I have no idea who pointed that out to him, someone, and that very effectively got under Ted Cruz's skin, shows that Donald Trump is far more knowledgeable about this section of American history than some may believe. A word about Ted Cruz, if I may, even though we're in his home state. If he's a conservative, I'm a vegetarian. This guy is a Bush family butt boy. He is the author of Bush versus Gore 2000, the lawsuit. He is the author of No Child Left Behind. He is the author of the Bush spending policies. He is the author of the Bush torture policies. He was George W. Bush's brain. His reinvention as a constitutional conservative is fairly recent, like when he decided to run for the U.S. Senate, before he decided not to run for Texas Attorney General. What kind of an outsider gets a secret $1 million loan from Goldman Sachs to run for the Senate and then doesn't report it as required on his campaign finance reforms? What kind of outsider gets a secret loan from Citibank for another $1 million and doesn't report it on his campaign finance reports as required by law? What kind of an outsider has a wife who's a member of the Council on Foreign Relations and who's written a terrific paper on why we should amalgamate our government with that of Mexico and Canada so we can all be one big happy family? I suspect that Mr. Cruz has political aspirations in the future, but I think the truth about him has to be revealed. He is a globalist, he is a Bush family retainer, and he is an exceedingly dangerous man. Now, why do people take an instantaneous dislike to Ted Cruz? I can tell you. They're just saving time. Now, Judith Baker and Wayne Madsen, two friends of mine, two people who've done extraordinary investigative and research work to tell the American people the truth about the Kennedy assassination, I think more than adequately covered the fact that Rafael Cruz was indeed in Lee Harvey Oswald's crew, that he was there, that there are many remaining questions about who he is, what he is, and who he worked for. And as Judith pointed out, you've never had a blanket denial from Senator Cruz, and he dropped out only days after this question was raised by Donald Trump. And if you've seen the video, the man has a virtual meltdown on television, a meltdown, where he ends up fighting with a 10-year-old boy on the street. So obviously this hit some kind of a raw nerve. Some of you may also have heard that during this terrific weekend that the author Joan Mellon spoke at the Lancer conference. She has claimed repeatedly that my book has no footnotes and no sources. I ask you to go back to look at my book in the back of the room. You will see that it has some 45 pages of footnotes and sources proving that Joan Mellon is a liar. And if she lies about that, she easily would lie about the question of Nathan Darby and the fingerprints that belong to the real killer of at least one of the shooters of John F. Kennedy, and that, of course, would be Malcolm Mac Wallace. Now, my friend Doug Caddy has debunked the mendacious Mellon's latest load of bullshit. So has Barr McClellan, so has Phil Nelson, so has Richard Bartholomew, so has Judith Baker. She's wrong. Perhaps this is why Ben Barnes, the longtime protege of LBJ, has told numerous people, and I have affidavits on this, that Mellon was being paid to write a book that would clean up Lyndon Johnson. Now, she does raise the question of the USS Liberty. This is an important question, but I frankly think that is to make Johnson's involvement in the Kennedy assassination less palatable, shall we say, or to try to discredit it. So I have reserved the right to sue Ms. Mellon. She lives in New Jersey, where fortunately I have many friends on the bench. And she has, as you know, hurt the sales of my book by saying things about my book that are false. Counselor, I think I have a cause of action there. This is the kind of disinformation that you see. I must tell you that one of my great concerns about the researcher community is that the only thing more dangerous than a lone nutter who insists that the Warren Commission report is correct are those in our own community who insist that only their view of what happened in the Kennedy assassination is accurate and that everybody else is wrong. I take a view that these are like pieces of a puzzle, that you have to step back and look at the entire picture from top to bottom. So, for example, those who say that John F. Kennedy was killed by a rogue group within the CIA, they're not wrong. Those who say that John Kennedy was killed by organized crime and the mob, they're not wrong. Those who say that John Kennedy was killed by Big Texas Oil, they're not wrong. But who is the one man who has a unique relationship with each one of these institutions? Lyndon Johnson, as the Senate Majority Leader, takes the unusual step of appointing himself to the subcommittee of the Defense Appropriations Committee, where the Central Intelligence Agency's black box budgets are formulated and approved through the entire 50s. Let me put it another way. Lyndon Johnson is the paymaster for the CIA. The mob, Lyndon Johnson has a tight relationship with Carlos Marcello. He's taking bribes from Marcello to cover up the illegal gambling dens that are being run in Houston, in Austin, in Dallas, in San Antonio. Those bribes being passed through a man named Jack Halfer, later pardoned for other minor crimes by President Lyndon Johnson. And of course, Johnson's role as the water boy, as the leg man for the Texas oil interests in Washington are widely known. So I argue that Johnson is the linchpin of a plot. See, we don't use the word conspiracy. A plot to kill John Kennedy. But he's the indispensable member of the plot. Who controls the Dallas Police Department? Who controls the Dallas District Attorney? and who immediately controls the FBI as soon as the deed is done? One man. Now, we know that Lyndon Johnson also tripled the FBI budget during the 50s, and he lives next door to J. Edgar Hoover. In fact, the Johnson girls refer to the FBI director as Uncle Edgar. Could these guys have been in it together? So it is important to recognize that none of us know everything, and that we're still piecing together extraneous but important pieces of information. I have huge respect for others who have gone long before me to try to uncover this puzzle, this enigma. I don't say that others are right or wrong. I try to fit new information into the mosaic that reveals what really happened here. The mainstream media has played an extraordinary role in the cover-up of the facts regarding John Kennedy's murder. And they have made it difficult through the 70s, particularly, and into the 80s, to figure out what really happened. The good news now is that the mainstream media has lost their monopoly. There was a day when ABC, NBC, CBS, they were the only source of information. And therefore, if they didn't report something, it didn't happen. Now with the advent of cable and talk radio, and most importantly, the internet, the toothpaste can no longer be kept in the tube. If John Kennedy were murdered today on Dealey Plaza, you'd have several hundred cell phone videos of it, photos of it, instead of the one film by Mr. Zapruder, which even I got Arlen Specter to admit had been altered. So we are in a new information age where anything is possible. That's why the government is starting to talk about regulating the internet. That's why the UN, can you imagine this? The UN is now going to have control of the net. Something we as taxpayers paid for to develop and was invented not by Al Gore, but with American ingenuity. And now you have, very disturbing, an effort to block what they call fake news. Fake news? Well, then block CNN, because that's as fake as it gets. CNN, you know, that stands for the Clinton News Network. Barbara Cullen's absolutely right about the ongoing effort to try to burnish the image of Lyndon Baines Johnson. If any of you have not seen the extraordinarily excellent movie Selma, I highly recommend it to you. It is a historically accurate truth about the fact that it was not Lyndon Johnson who moved the Selma March. It was not Lyndon Johnson who wanted to do the 1965 Voting Rights Act. He was forced into it by Dr. King, who outwitted one of the smartest and wiliest politicians in the country. In fact, as he writes in his biography, Andrew Young said that LBJ called Dr. King that crazy nigger preacher who thinks he's running the country. That's how close they were. You see, Joe Califano tells us King and Johnson were on great terms. Really? Then why did you call him that? Why did you use the N-word to denigrate him? A word, by the way, Johnson used constantly when he was in front of the Southern senators so that he could prove that he was one of them. At the same time, he was writing the Southern Manifesto against civil rights, but declining to sign it because he wanted to be president in 1960. It is important that the scholarship continue. it's important that we continue to have free access to the internet, to talk to each other, to share new information, and frankly, to be wary of those who say they have all the answers. No one person has all the answers. And we are learning more about the Kennedy assassination as the years go by. I am one of those who fervently believes that if you sit back and you plot it out, you will see that the attempted assassination of Fidel Castro, the Bay of Pigs invasion, of which the federal government will still not release the remaining documents, the Kennedy assassination, Watergate and the removal of Richard Nixon, the pardon and the elevation of Gerald Ford, these are all interrelated events. In fact, you had my co-author and friend St. John's Hunt speak to you. How could it be that his father is there in the Bay of Pigs? He's involved in the attempted assassination of Castro. He is there on Dealey Plaza. He is there as one of the Watergate burglars. Coincidence? I think not. So, I am delighted to have the opportunity. For those of you who have asked me if I have any intention of joining the government, we all know that I'm entirely unconfirmable by the U.S. Senate, and therefore there is no chance of my joining an administration. I would, of course, do anything the President-elect asked me to do. I intend to stay outside the government to support the President's reform agenda. Now, the most dangerous thing that happens now, because I was in President Ronald Reagan's transition in 1980, and again in 1984, 80 being more important because you're completely reforming government. The real danger now are the establishment boarding parties, the neocons, the globalists. Anybody who comes to the fore and says, and I quote, "I was with you the whole time," those are the people you need to keep an eye out for. I think it is vitally important that the President-elect select men and women who support his vision of American nationalism. By that,